Welcome to Finding the Truth with Myke Hideous. I'm an artist, photographer, and an author. In the late 80s, I created a band called The Empire Hideous. Until 2009, I was a PC liberal Democrat, after which I became an independent. I believe in science, and I consider myself an alchemist who seeks answers to difficult questions. You're listening to Finding the Truth with me, Myke Hideous. The opinions and ideas expressed during this podcast belong to the speakers and are not a reflection on the services used to distribute this podcast. Listener and viewer discretion is advised. Hello, folks, and welcome to Finding the Truth with me, your host, Myke Hideous. Today is February 6th. And I believe this is going to be our 6th show. And I'm happy to say things have been increasing with progress as we put out the episodes. And I'm very happy that people are listening. Thank you so much for all of you out there who are listening. If you like the show, please like and subscribe so that you can get information as to when the next episode comes out, so on and so forth. And with that being said, I'd like to introduce my co-host / producer and the man behind the scenes, Professor Z.
Mm-hmm. Yes, thank you. Thanks, Myke, and welcome everybody. I'm pleased to be part of the program and bantering with Myke over the issues at hand today. So what do we have at hand? We have a couple of interesting stories.
A lot of interesting things have happened since we've done the last show, as they do every day. Like I wake up and scratch my head on what the hell's happening today, and I lose my mind. But yes, we have a number of topics.
It does seem like a daily occurrence, doesn't it? I mean, quite honestly, if people aren't paying attention on a daily basis, it's kind of like a facepalm every day. Like, what did they just say? Wow.
Every day it's like that now. Crazy. And it's only been like that for the last 3 years.
3 years. Yeah. 3 years. Yeah.
3 years. Every day I wake up in shock. I want to crawl back into a hole or something. Anyway, so what do we got on the slab for topics today?
Well, there's just one of the big things that obviously is going on, and it's definitely finally making it to the top of the mass media and so forth, is the fact that essentially we are dealing with a form of invasion. We have most definitely a swarm. That's not even an accurate term to cover it. In fact, I read a story earlier today where, funny enough, Dr. Phil decided to take a trip to the Texas border so he could assess himself what was going on. It's interesting, and out of the whole spectrum of people noted, this is somebody who makes the news. And he goes to the border, and he actually is now telling the reporters and telling media that the border officials are actually telling him that in the last 3 years plus, we're looking at more like 14 million illegal immigrants having crossed the border, not 6.
Mm-hmm.
And that 6 is somehow a term that the Border Patrol is laughing about because they don't know where that number came from. But from their perspective, we're looking at 14 million illegal individuals in our country.
Illegal aliens.
Which is illegal aliens, and
that's right. I've heard the same
and
story.
They don't have antennas on their heads. So I mean,
right. I've heard this very same story. In fact, yesterday, and the very first thing you said was how you described it as a quote unquote invasion, and that seems to me to be very accurate at this point. Because of how things are occurring and the amount of people that you have coming, not from the South Americas, but from other countries, including Korea, China, the Arabic countries, various European countries, Russia, and so forth. And as I've mentioned before, there are 100, from what I'm told, there are 167 other countries in which people are going to South America and making the trek up through our southern border into our country. This is unheard of. Okay? This is, as you said, more of an invasion type scenario than anything else. This is not, and this is not about amnesty, because as I said once before, when the lawyers are telling these people just claim amnesty, but that's not how amnesty works. So as I've said before, if you're coming from, let's just say, Argentina, and you're traveling north. Now I cannot remember exactly what countries border Argentina, but they are not Mexico. Well, actually, they may be Mexico. It's not America, is what I'm saying.
Argentina's far too south, but
Okay.
yes.
The point of the matter is, whatever country you cross over into from that border of your country, again, let's say, using Argentina as an example, since it's not connected to the United States of America, you would claim amnesty in that country because that you're seeking asylum. Did I say amnesty? I meant asylum. Sorry. Is that the same thing?
There you go. Yep, not really. Not at all.
Sorry. So asylum. Asylum saves you from a situation where you're either being
Politically persecuted, somehow.
military, somehow. Yeah, you got to become safe.
Your life is in danger.
Your life is in danger. So what's happening is they're crossing through all these countries. They're going up to the Mexican-American border, and then they're saying, we need asylum. And that's not how it works. So based on all these things that I'm talking about, brings me to another topic. Okay.
Well, let me just underscore something that, in this point, it's an invasion most specifically because not only are these people coming from all over the planet, not necessarily from South America or Mexico, but they're mostly still males in fighting age range. So they're between 18 to 35 or something roughly like that, majority of them. Mm-hmm. There is very few women. There's very few children. And the children that they're coming across are getting lost as well. I mean, Mayorkas actually admitted the fact that he has no idea where, 75,000 children are. And, it's just, they've come across the border. So, I mean, the primary concern is quite honestly the fighting age adults that are coming across the border. And we'll get into this in our second segment, but then now we actually have them organizing into gangs and attacking the local police. But, it's certainly, it's a bit more concerning because it's not just like families walking hand in hand across the border looking for a new home. Right. No, we've got a lot of, able-bodied individuals that for some reason are coming here rather than trying to find success in their own, lands.
That's right. So, in reference to these illegal aliens crossing over into our country, and I refuse to call them dreamers or migrants because that's bullshit. Okay, let's call a spade a spade. They are illegal immigrants crossing over into this country illegally and are being allowed to vote, drive, get licenses, and so on and so forth. Which I'm against.
Handed credit cards with $1,000 on
phones,
it,
whatever. So we all know about that. Here's my next point. So you've got Texas and the governor of Texas, Abbott, who has since stood up to President Corpse and the idiots in his administration. Governor Abbott is supported by 30 Republican states to stop President Corpse from allowing his army to cut the razor wires, that's the U.S. military, to cut the razor wires along the Texas border, allowing illegal immigrants to come in. So the governor has stood up and said they're not going to do this anymore because Texas, American citizens in Texas are now becoming in danger by the millions of them that have been brought into that state. Okay, so now President Corpse continues to allow illegals to cross the border, defying all states' from stopping him. He is breaking the law. I'll repeat that. President Corpse is breaking the law. He is doing an impeachable act by allowing these people to come into our country unvetted and giving him all the perks that he's giving them.
Well,
let me
by
be clear
purely
about
not
this.
enforcing the law.
Let me be
He's
clear
not
about this,
enforcing it.
though. I am not against people who are looking to come to this country legally. I am against allowing anyone and everyone from every corner of the world to come into this country at no cost. There is not a country on this planet that does this sort of stupidity to their own border and country and citizens. Not a country in the world except this country with the administration that is ruining our safety, putting our citizens in predicaments in which their safety is at risk, and so forth. I think you get my meaning. If I may
It's
just
our
continue,
sovereignty.
right?
That's the term,
So
sovereignty.
if I may just continue, our government is defiantly letting illegals into the country and potentially placing Americans in danger. Terrence Williams, I think I said his name, Terrence Williams, that's right, an Abbott representative, told internet followers, quote, "Civil war is coming soon," unquote, to 1.7 million of them, of their followers. He said that on X. That's how many followers he had, 1.7 million. He told President Corpse, quote, "You're trying to start a civil war. You've got everyone in Texas all bent up," period, unquote. Biden is guilty of treason. I cannot be more adamant about this. I cannot be more passionate about this. The president is a criminal. Period. I said it. And that's all I have to say on that matter.
And that's all you have to say about that. Well,
I will.
mean,
If I'm
said,
sorry, one more time. I'm sorry. If I may add this, last month, illegal immigrants reached an all-time record high of 320,000 incidences crossing the border that are documented. All right, so all these people,
and that's the ones they know of.
That's the ones they know of, right? In addition to that, Texas authorities seized Texas authorities seized a public park along the Rio Grande, and they blocked the border. I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble reading my own writing. They blocked border patrol agents from accessing 2.3 million miles of border. So almost 2.5 miles of border. So the administration, Biden's administration, is allowing the army or military to go down, cut the razor wire where Texas is trying to board it up. Board it up is a bad word, but wire it up so that the people don't cross that easily. And they're sending the military down to cut the wire. So Texas has now stepped up their abilities using their Coast Guard or whoever is the military part of Texas. They're coming in to reset these borders and restring razor wire to keep these people out. And rightfully so. Rightfully so. They have every right to do it. Oh my God, it just gets me so angry.
So just so I can add some, other points to this thing. One of the things that the government actually, Biden's administration has actually pointed out is that they are not going to cut any razor wire, even though the Supreme Court judge, basically ruled in their favor, saying that they were allowed. But the interesting thing about the ruling is the fact that the ruling basically said that the government is allowed to cut the razor wire. And that's it. They didn't say that Texas wasn't allowed to put up razor wire. They didn't say that, they had to take it down. They just said that the government has the right to cut it if they want to. And so that's where, at the very least, if the government really wants to, they can go there and cut it down. But Abbott's already pointed out, we'll be happy to put it up just as quickly as you cut it down. And they're not giving up that park that you mentioned. That's critical, because that park is something that the government specifically wanted access to cut the razor wire down on.
Right.
And they got it, but they're saying, no, we're going to stay off of it. Why are they going to stay off it? Because it's really controversial at this point, especially if you're going to walk in there and cut down the razor wire in literally every city in America is like, at the breaking point of dealing with, trying to support these immigrants, or at least the sanctuary cities. It's not going to work out. Anyway, so just strengthening your point there, that this is an unacceptable situation, and it's certainly not going to lead to anything good, especially when we look at the results of the fact that we're letting in people that have no appreciation for American values.
They're not looking to assimilate.
Not at all. They're looking to take advantage of.
Right. Which blows my mind, how these people think that they can come into our country, as free as it may be, and just start bringing their own culture in to say, hey, you need to respect my way. Well, try respecting our way first. Then maybe we'll talk about that. Because, again, this country was founded on Judeo-Christian values, okay? Not of which I follow neither. But the point of the matter is, that's what it was founded on, all right? So now all of a sudden you're going to get Arabs coming in and telling us, no, we want more association with Allah and the Islamic traditions. No. You want that? Go to Jordan. Go to Afghanistan. Go to Iraq, Iran. Go to those countries, because that's where it is. That's where the majority of the radical religion of Islam is. You want to be a part of that? Go back to those countries. Don't come here, because I have no desire to hear anything about Islam or Muslim culture. I don't care. I really don't.
Okay, and I totally agree with that perspective. But the interesting thing at this point is that what we're seeing in the way of violence, or especially the headlines recently about the police in New York City, those are Venezuelans. They aren't necessarily Muslim. They're necessarily Catholic.
No, I understand. Don't get me wrong. I think you're missing my point. All those people from 167 different countries are not going to all be Muslim. As I said, some of them are Chinese, some of them are Russian, some of them are, whatever, Korean.
Well, they come with their own ideologies, whatever it is, but they're not interested in becoming Americans.
No. They're interested in taking advantage of the perks that our collective retarded government right now is giving them.
Yeah, because Biden basically rolled out the welcome carpet and literally is like, come on in, guys. We'll give you whatever we can.
Did you hear his latest bullshit about how he's been trying so hard to close down the border, but Congress won't let him?
It is so difficult to listen to that man talk, because every time he talks is like, are you kidding?
He's an idiot.
You have to, you can do this. You don't need that. You're lying your ass off. No, it's not Republicans' fault that, the borders are wide open.
Yeah.
It's not, oh, well, we've tried to solve this for years and it couldn't be solved.
Oh my God. Does anybody believe that anymore?
Well, we had a perfect example. Whether you hate the big orange meanie or not, the man actually, ran the country for 4 years, and there was hardly any illegal immigration. And the world was at peace, more or less. And that is still the idea of peace through strength. There is no strength in the Biden administration whatsoever. They are feckless, weak, spineless. They will not do what is necessary.
So in reference to what you just said about how Trump kept things safe, when he was in office, in 4 years, they captured, I believe it was 30 terrorists trying to cross the border, in which it was taken care of. In just a year, 172 terrorists, I think, have been caught through the border control. In addition to that, another interesting thing about the Democrats is how they were the blatant hypocrisy, lying is just, it blows me away. They were saying that the Republicans were the ones who were insisting to defund the police. You remember that? Because I don't.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I remember when that first came up, and it was just so literally funny. Like, seriously, please show me the video clip of any Republican that says anything along those lines. There's absolutely none that you can find.
I will say this
Um,
again to any Democrat listening to this show. And remember, I used to be a Democrat for 30 years, a politically correct liberal Democrat for 30 years. I say this to you. If you believe the Democrat Party is doing right by you, you really have a serious knowledge problem. Like you really need to check yourself because it I've learned, okay, after 30 years I learned. And how did I learn? I learned by comparing the two parties, by listening to what they had to say, whether it was politicians or reporters reporting about what the politician said. And it came to me to understand, yeah, there's a lot of lying that goes in the Republican Party too. I will not deny that. But compared to the Democrats, look, if you're out there and you're black and you're a Democrat, I ask you, what has the Democrat Party done for you? In fact, when Hussein Obama was president, what did he do for you? Did he give you an Obama phone? Did he give you Obamacare? Because that turned out to be an absolute disaster. What did they do for you? They did nothing. Okay, Trump did more for the black community as well as the Asian community, the women, and so forth than any president did before him. And yet they completely ignore that and deny it because, again, the media
well,
has an agenda.
only the conservative media is going to report that. All of
That's
the
right.
other media, they're all going to say that, like, they're not going to point it out. But it is exactly as you said. For those 3 years, across the board, everybody, every ethnic breakdown, however you want to look at our society, they did better under that administration than they have done in the last 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Last 3 years have been just such abysmal for everybody who doesn't somehow have a seven-figure income every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah,
and I'm serious about the seven figures. Six-figure income isn't going to be enough. You're going to still hurt.
mm-hmm.
But if you have a seven-figure income, sure, you're not going to the grocery store. You have somebody that does that for you probably, and you're just paying the bills every month. I'm like, oh, well, those look a little higher, but hey, it's no big deal. I'm still getting in six figures every month. So what difference does it make?
Yep. And I don't know if I made the mention of this, but black Democrats in Chicago are now standing up and saying, F you, Democrat Party, we're voting Republican. In fact, they
And that
even invited, who did they invite? They invited somebody from the Republican Party to talk to them about how they want to switch over. And I couldn't praise them enough.
mm.
Again, I'm not left or right. Okay. I am an independent since I denounced my Democratic background, and I will never, ever,
I'm going to have
ever.
to say, Mike, there's going to be those that are going to argue with you on that
Of
point
course,
because you
there are.
definitely sound very right. There's no
I
way
do.
to, you can say you're independent, and I agree with your perspective because I like to be independent in my thought. I don't necessarily consider, the party as first. I'm trying to look at the individual and decide, if they're worthy of the job. But,
Precisely. My
other
father,
than
my
that,
father, and my mother used to tell me that when I was younger, before I could vote. In fact, even after I was 18 and I was able to vote, my dad used to tell me the government has no reason to know what your political background is. They don't need to know. It's a private thing, and it should remain that way. And I agree with them. The other thing was that they would tell me, my father would always tell me, I'm going to vote for the person who I think is going to do the job correctly. The strange thing is, I never knew if my parents were Republican or Democrat.
really,
I
you
never
never got a
knew.
feel for them or they never really said,
They never
talked about
said.
the parties.
Never. And I should probably ask my brother if he knew because I never knew. I do remember my father taking me to get my voting card for the first time at age 18, and then I voted. But I didn't really know much about it back then. I didn't really understand politics until about my mid 20s. Had no need to.
Interesting.
Didn't care. You know.
It's funny. I think one of my earliest memories was actually seeing on television the 1972 Republican convention. You know, and I think that was the one for I guess it was Nixon
What
and
year?
Ford or something. 1972.
Oh,
But in either
72.
case, yeah, it's just
Well, Nixon was kicked out, so to speak, so Ford took over.
well, yeah, that's exactly what that's was the scenario.
Maybe it was
So
Ford and Carter.
I'm obviously wrong about that. We'll have to go check the Wikipedia. But regardless, my point is going to be that my parents actually, I could tell, were Democrats. They were always Democrats.
Mm.
Interesting enough, that I do think my mom actually volunteered for Richard Nixon's campaign in the early '60s,
I
and I
am not a
actually have a
crook.
letter. I have a letter from his office basically thanking her for her volunteer work in the 1960s.
How about that?
But I'm pretty sure both my parents leaned that way towards liberalism or towards Democrat ideals for whatever reason. But yeah, their son is definitely not in that league anymore. Like Myke has pointed out many times, I am definitely not an individual who is part of the Bleeding Heart Liberals anymore. I
Oh,
served
that's
my
right. Yeah, I
time in
forgot
that.
you were a Democrat. Right.
Oh, definitely.
I
Yeah, I
forgot
was a
about that.
Bleeding Heart Democrat, and
Yeah.
I can thankfully say that my heart has healed, and I feel much better now. And my heart doesn't bleed anymore, and I have principles and values where I really do respect individual rights more than the groupthink that tends to pervade everybody's thought process.
Well, you know what the saying is? The saying is when you're young, you're a liberal, and then you grow up and become a Republican.
Right. Or more conservative at the very least. I think that's a more apt term, because I despise both parties. There's RINOs and DINOs in both parties. So, and that, just to make sure people understand, that's Republicans in name only or Democrats in name only.
I got to
So,
say, I never heard the term dino, but now I know what it is. Okay.
well, that's probably not widely used, but the reality is that these guys, individuals that want to run for elected office,
Oh,
they
I get
pick a
it.
party
I get
that
it.
most will help them get the job.
Yeah.
And then once they have the job, then
Then it's all about corruption.
right. Well, sort of, or at least they'll go where the wind blows. So it's just like it goes back to our last episode where you brought up that interesting comparison, talking about the NFL
Yeah.
and the
NBA.
NBA, and it was actually the politicians that were all crappy
Yeah. All members of Congress, right?
yes, exactly. They were all very despicable individuals. So I mean, it's so uh,
See, like when people
disappointing.
people tell me that my ideas tend to lean right, I say to them this: well, I believe in abortion. I also believe in capital punishment, which I always found weird because the Democrats are opposed to capital punishment, but they're totally for killing babies. The
Of course.
Republicans are all about killing criminals, but not about killing babies. And see, I've had a theory about this for all my life about abortions. It may not set well with others, but here it is. So I feel that if you're going to abort a child, an infant, an embryo, a fetus, that it's better to do it at the early stages of life when this human being that is, this big or even a couple inches long is not functioning like a child, a young adult, an adult, or an elderly at that point. In life, we accumulate thoughts and nostalgic memories and all these things that go through our brain as our brain begins to grow with knowledge. But as an infant, or let me be more specific, as an embryo or a fetus, I sincerely believe that that is not anywhere close to how that human being is A, thinking, or reacting. So to eliminate such a human being from a woman's womb, I sincerely believe is a better thing to do than, say, killing it after it's been born. You know, it,
Wow.
if
Okay.
I
Yes, I
know it's
would
pretty hard.
certainly hope so. Oh my
Well,
gosh.
do you get my? Do you understand what I'm trying
Because
to
as
say
you just
here?
said, that would be killing it for sure,
Right
after it
now,
was born.
in ancient times, I'm sure you saw the movie 300 about the Greeks.
Yes, of
All right,
course.
you
Well,
remember
yes,
the
more
beginning?
accurately, the Spartans.
Right. You remember in the beginning when they talk about how if a child was deformed
Oh
or
yeah, I know.
weak,
Yeah.
they'd simply throw it away. That was the mentality back in the day. And now let me bring you another point of reference. Most animals, and I know we're not animals like who walk on four legs and stuff like that, but we are part of the animal kingdom. All animal Let me rephrase that. Maybe not all animals, but I know most animals that if their baby is deformed, sick, or something, not only will they possibly abandon it, in some cases they fucking eat it. So
Yeah.
I don't.
No, I mean you're right, not wrong, but I
Oh,
mean
I know I'm not
we
wrong.
are evolved, and we have obviously consciousness and
That goes
sentience.
back to the last episode we have about morals.
Yeah, well, exactly. But um, let me at least bring up my point, because you did describe your ideas on, and it's interesting how we ended up on abortion at this point. But
That's just what the
since
Democrats and Republicans prefer.
well, and you're not wrong. I mean, what you described there is exactly correct. The Democrat and the Republican perspective seems to be that way. I tend to think that hopefully I have maybe slightly more evolved opinion on it, because it's more of the gray area. I tend to like to point out the fact that life is most definitely not black and white. It is literally tens of thousands of shades of gray, but it's not black and white. And the reality is that when, like you pointed out, if you're going to choose to do an abortion, you want to do it in the earliest first trimester, and you want to make that decision
Yeah, I
because
agree.
obviously it's best for everybody involved,
I agree.
essentially. And um, and especially the mother, because especially in those cases of rape, incest, and those things where it's obviously not a wanted pregnancy,
Right.
the mother should have the choice. And so that's where I'm fully pro-choice. But on the other side of the perspective is that if people were more responsible, personally responsible, and had morals, they wouldn't have to make that choice,
That's
because
right.
they would be more responsible not to have sex in the first place.
That's right.
And the real moral point that I'm going to make, and may be different to what you're pointing out, Myke, is the fact that um, regardless of when you make the decision of aborting a child, a vast majority of pregnancies and conceptions actually end in a viable human being. So whether you like it or not, ending a pregnancy is killing your child. So, it's really up to the person to conceptualize, I mean, the mother especially, to deal with that reality that, yes, I am ending a life. I am ending a life that's in me. And you have to make that choice because of obviously those other reasons I already mentioned. But it's still something you have to live with, and you can't necessarily, I don't feel it's appropriate to dismiss the fact that, oh, I can abort it now because he hasn't evolved, or the fetus or the zygote hasn't evolved to a point where it actually has memories or thoughts or any conception of what's going on.
Mhm.
It's still a
And do you
potential
agree with
life.
that or no? Do you
How do you
think that
mean?
an embryo and a fetus is capable of thinking and having feelings inside the womb when it
No,
hasn't even
not
seen the
yet.
world? No.
No, not yet.
That's my
No, not
point.
at all. But
That's my
I
point.
I get that point. But I mean, the thing is that it has the potential. Most conceptions will have a
Yeah, but that's going
accurate.
without saying. Everything that gets born eventually evolves into a complicated, educated, knowledgeable creature.
With that, the percentages are in that favor, and that's all I'm pointing out, is the fact that yes, you can choose to abort your child for X reason, whatever it might be, but the reality is you're still ending a life. and there's just,
Well, now take that
I don't think there's a
concept.
gray area. I mean, that is the ultimate gray area because it's not
So,
black
all
and
right.
white.
So
I'm,
take
I'm
that
not just,
concept and now add it to the democratic idea of which they allow the mothers to right up to the fourth trimester and even after birth to
I'm
decide
sorry, there's
whether or
only
not.
three trimesters, dude.
What I say? I'm sorry. I say fourth,
You said
third
fourth
sorry,
trimester.
fourth, third trimester, up until the point where even after the child is born. So they were making it so that even after the child was
Oh,
born,
sure.
you could make the decision to have it eliminated or keep it.
No.
That to
That's
me,
where,
sorry, that to me is murder.
yes,
Once it's
I
out of the
totally
womb, it's
agree.
murder.
Most definitely. And even honestly into the second or third trimester, because
Yes,
if you
it
have
should
any
be done early.
concerns,
But like you said, there's a lot of gray areas. If there if there was a circumstance where she couldn't get the abortion in the first trimester or whatever, then maybe the second, maybe even the third. But after it's born, I mean, that's just wrong.
well, that's completely wrong. But they're still within the first hi cat's tail. Definitely within the first obviously trimester, which is 12 weeks correctly. Yes, you should be able to make a decision that I can't carry this child for these
Agreed.
reasons.
Agreed.
and
It's a
and
very,
and
very delicate
and
situation to be
uh,
talked about.
I'm only going to point out this part, and it's like because I have had dealt with this question. My former, my ex, when we were first seeing one another,
Ex-boyfriend?
um, that's right, because that's certainly a plausible
He was
scenario to
pregnant?
follow through on. No, in fact, my ex wife, thank you, who was a female with a vagina.
Thank God.
And in either case, we conceived a child before we were married. And somehow, this good Catholic girl was very adamant about the fact that she wanted to get an abortion before we were still very committed to one another, but she decided she wanted to have an abortion. And me being a good bleeding heart liberal was like, well, it's your choice. If you want to do that, okay, fine. And so I actually sent her the money, and that was done. And this was after she already had conceived of a child out of wedlock. And, that became my daughter because I adopted her. But still, I have some regret at this point, especially in retrospect. The fact that I willingly, paid to have that child aborted. That child may have made a huge difference in our lives. And
Sure. That's all part of guilt and
sure.
conscience. I can understand that. I've had a situation like that once in my life. And here's the weird thing. The girl I was going with at the time, I was in my late teens. I don't even think I was 21 yet. And so she told me once that she had an abortion, which turned out to be a lie. And then later on, she did have an abortion and she didn't even tell me. So when I found out, I was kind of shocked. I'll be the first to admit.
I imagine, yeah, wow.
But after she lied to me the first time, I almost had trouble believing her the second time, but it turned out to be true. All I'm saying is that, yeah, I did sort of experience it to an extent, I guess you could say, even though I wasn't there or paid for it or anything like that. Yeah, I was young, stupid. Hey folks, thanks for listening to Finding the Truth with Myke Hideous. Listen, don't forget to check out all my hideous merchandise, including t-shirts, blankets, hoodies, CDs, and my book, King of an Empire to the Shoes of a Misfit. It's all available only at MykeHideous.com. And don't forget, that's Myke with a Y, M-Y-K-E, MykeHideous.com. Right, folks, so here we are. As you may have heard before, Z and I were Professor Z and I were talking about how there is a new trend of black voters who are now claiming they are going to most definitely vote Republican, and in this case, for Donald Trump in 2024 November election. So why is this happening? I'll tell you why it's happening. And it's not just the black folk who are claiming that they're going to vote Republican. It's a lot of people who are seeing the truth of this corrupt criminal man who is allegedly leading our country primarily into ruin. They're sick and tired of it. Just like many of them were sick and tired of Hussein Obama telling them how they were going to change things and make things better for the black community when they did nothing. So here you had an entire group of black people who were Democrats who voted in President Corpse back in 2020 because they were uneducated on the voting, on the candidates, on what they were actually doing for them. Now, 3 years later, they're beginning to realize that President Corpse has done nothing for them. He's making matters worse. He's making gas prices high, inflation high, starting wars. I shouldn't say starting wars, but as a result of his weak administration, wars are breaking out all over the world, so to speak. Okay, and now we are in the midst, not the midst, the beginning of World War III. And the potential of what could happen by the end of this year, if China gets involved and starts taking Taiwan, we're going to do nothing, in my opinion. We had to wait 27 times, I think it was, from attacks from Yemen and Iran on American military before we
27
even did
160 some odd times.
I stand corrected. So 160 plus times that our troops not only were killed, but attacked or set upon with an attack, and we did nothing. I could tell you now.
Until recently.
What was it, Sunday?
Until recently, we put the hammer down. We decided we were going to do something, and we destroyed some tents. And who knows? Tents, I don't know. Right. I don't even know that one human being on their side was actually injured or
probably not. So we have all this animosity that's building up from the result of a weak president and a weak administration with the idealism of utopia, and how everybody's going to love each other, and the Iranians are going to love us, and the North Koreans are going to love us, and everything's just going to be peachy fucking keen. Well, I got news for you. It's not how things work in this world. Well, and the only way these people in these countries, which by the way are our enemies, the only thing they understand is strength and power. And that is something that this president and the administration do not have. And if you don't see that by now, you're living under a rock.
Or you're just really not paying attention and you're focused on whatever
in most cases,
in your life.
That's right. Because I've seen interviews with people, primarily younger people, who have they're so fucking involved in TikTok and Facebook and Instagram and all this shit on their phone that they have no idea what is actually taking place except what CNN and MSNBC and all the other ridiculous news broadcasts are telling them, because that's all they know.
I'm sorry, if you're under 35, you're most likely not watching any of those news services. You're getting your news from social media. So whatever it is you are watching, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, you know, I'm not sure what else would be on that list at this point, but you're not getting any actual news from an actual news source. That's you're right. Just getting an interpretation of what people want to tell you. Mm-hmm. And what will get likes and what will get, you know, shares, and, you know, what makes it, you know, viral. And that's the part that's not accurate. You know, whatever is viral and hot on your news feed is most likely bullshit, or at least half the story.
And before I get back into the subject, what I just wanted to mention was how many people voted against Trump. In some cases, probably the majority of cases, simply because they didn't like him, because they didn't like his his text, his tweets on Twitter at the time, which they considered to be mean. But nobody takes into consideration all the mean shit that was said about him, and how he eventually had to defend himself from all these crackpots that were against him simply because he was a Republican and they didn't like him, and he was a white male. So they
No,
vote in another guy who is a white male and is,
he
if
is.
anybody had racism in their blood, it was Joe Biden. The things that he said
Yeah.
in public over the last 40 years, and everybody just ignored it. But
Well,
I
he's the one that
digress.
was friends with Grand Dragon. What's his
I know
name?
that's what I'm saying. But I'm digressing here. What I'm trying to say now is you have black people who are finally standing up and saying we've had enough. This is bullshit, and I'm glad they are. Now, I'm going to say something that might be a little controversial, but I'm simply telling you what I saw on the internet. So there is a new organization of people, all black, and they are for President Trump. And they go by the name of, and mind you, this is their name, not mine. I didn't name it, they did. It's called, and I quote, niggas for Trump, unquote. Niggas for Trump.
NFT. There we go. Okay. I
I think it's
understand.
brilliant. I really do. I think it's hilarious, brilliant, and at the same time, it's showing support for Donald Trump and what they now realize was a mistake in having voted in President Corpse.
And you know what? No news service is going to cover this
Of
probably
course not.
because of that name all by itself.
Right, because
Unless
they're all
they can
scared.
somehow,
They're all scared.
they would be terrified to actually, announce that on the news, no
Mm-hmm.
matter what side of the spectrum they are
That's
on.
right. I'm not
So
afraid. It doesn't bother me. Words don't bother me one bit. And
I
I've said that
agree. I
before.
come from the George Carlin philosophy of language. So, words don't hurt people. It's deeds, it's
That's
actions.
right. And so yeah, that's what a certain black community is doing. And if I'm correct, I think they were from Chicago. I could be wrong. I can't remember where I heard that this group was forming. But I commend them. I'm happy for them that they're making the right choice because, again, I've said this 1,000 times. It's not the man that they should be judgmental on. It's the actions that he does at his job as a president. So when Donald Trump was president, yeah, he may have said some off-color things on Twitter at the time or wherever else. And frankly, I didn't care one bit. I really didn't care. As long as I knew he was doing his job right, that's all that mattered. And by me, the job that is supposed to be done right, number one, taking care of this country and protecting it. Number two, taking care of its citizens and protecting its citizens and not illegal immigrants. That's what I believe in. I don't care. You know the big thing about before he was president and how he talked about grabbing a woman by her cooch. Remember that? Are you there?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So
No,
when
I
he said that,
remember.
that didn't bother me one bit. You know why? Because he wasn't president. Nor
Well,
did he
he
have
wasn't
any
president, but
intention to be
not
president
to
at that
mention
point in time when he said that.
he wasn't president, and not to mention to some degree, sure, it's a very crass thing to say, but he probably didn't, I'm sorry, maybe women won't accept this, but guys talk smack like that all
All
the
the
time
time. You and I have talked
amongst
like
each
that
other.
all like every day.
Yeah, well, sure, and it's just like you know, I I don't know what to say. Sure, I guess it's insulting on some level to women, but on the other hand, um, you know, most guys would like to grab something that was really nice like that or whatever. And, I don't know how more delicately I could say that. But
I think
hey,
I
you
think we
know,
get your point. You're
and
right.
if you happen to be in the billionaires club, and okay, and that's where I don't have a problem with
Listen, you know as well as I do, and you just said it. People, guys, let's be specific. Guys talk like that all the time, and I don't care if you're straight or gay. That's how guys talk. Okay,
and I think it's hardwired. I think that's
of course it
evolution.
is.
It's the fact that we have this evolution, drive to want to propagate our species, and that's not a bad thing.
No, it's how it is interpreted from us in this so-called civilized world society that we live in. Nevertheless, let's bring this point up because I've been around some women and they talk some smack. Let me tell you, they talk just as bad as guys. So when I heard the people who were criticizing that particular comment, I said to myself, what? You people never swore. You people never said an off-colored comment. You've never told a dirty joke. Come on, you're a bunch of hypocrites. And as I said, this was before his presidency, before he had even considered running for a president. So who cares?
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Bill Clinton got a blowjob in the Oval Office. I'd consider that to be a big deal.
Sure. I mean, hell, JFK apparently got a lot more with Marilyn, Monroe. So,
Marilyn Monroe, right?
and not to
Marilyn
mention,
Monroe's
I
other
guess
girls
she hit
too.
up RFK too. So, I mean, it's the if you want to talk about sexual scandals, fine. But going back to, I think, another point you were making before, just at least about Trump, is the fact that the man is actually true to his word, as opposed to a
Exactly.
hypocrite who doesn't stand there at a podium and say one thing and seemingly is doing another behind the scenes. The man
Right.
actually, delivered on what he said he was trying to deliver.
That's right.
And so, even if somehow it was a negative thing, it doesn't really matter. At least he was true to his word. And going back to our point when we started the segment, it doesn't take much for any ethnic population, blacks, Hispanics, you name it, to recognize the fact that they're earning less and everything's costing more and
Mm-hmm.
everything was cheaper before.
Mm-hmm.
And that's one of the clips I saw most recently. I think it was on MSNBC, pointing out the fact that here's this audience, and I think it was actually from South Carolina, pointing out the fact that, I had more money when Trump was in office, so I'm going to vote for him this time because
Right.
I have a hell of a lot less money now. And
That's right.
that's
I can
horrible.
only hope. I can only hope that if indeed, and I swear to Christmas, I hope Donald Trump wins this coming election. There can't be another alternative. There just can't be. It has to be him.
It's an
Okay,
imperative, quite
it's an
honestly.
imperative. He's the only man that can save this country. So what I'm saying is that if indeed he does win as a result of blacks and or Latinos and other minority groups voting for him because they realize how crooked the Democrat Party has become and off centered, that after Trump wins another 4 years, that they continue to vote Republican. Because, in my opinion, again, even though I'm an independent, I sincerely believe that the Democrats are out of their freaking minds. And as we were just saying about the whole, what we were just talking about here, a perfect example of the Democrats being effed up is how they blatantly lie right to our faces on those cameras when they're asked a question by journalists, and they lie like we don't already see the truth or the answer to that question, and knowing that they're being hypocrites and lying to us, in addition to blaming the Republicans for what they themselves are guilty of. They called Trump fascist. They called him a dictator when they themselves are doing the exact same thing that they're accusing Trump of. In addition to having said Trump, they're saying, here, my note right here. President Corpse is claiming that the things that he overturned, like all those executive orders he overturned as soon as he got into office, that were Trump's policies, he overturned all of them. Now they're blaming Trump and the prior administration for creating the very problems that we have now, which is it's utterly ridiculous. It's nonsense. It's a hypocritical,
Well, it just
lying
doesn't work with the
statement.
facts. I mean, it's not reality. Their administration definitely had less immigration issues. We weren't looking at what we're looking at in the last 3 years, 14 million illegal immigrants. I mean, it just wasn't a reality. So you can't
Right.
blame it on the previous administration. They're absolutely ridiculous to even go there. And that's where it's so
But that's what they do.
laughable. I know, but it's just, that's where it's like, how do you think that anybody's believing this BS?
Right, that's what I'm saying. It's like how can they possibly think the American people have gotten so stupid to their actions? Like, we see it every day. It's happening all over the world as a result of their weakness and their poor strategy.
And that's where in the cities of America, they're seeing, the effects and the fact that, minority groups, blacks as well as Hispanics or whatever other group you want to point out, they're seeing how these people are coming into these people. I hate to say that term.
Ah,
The people are coming
that's
into
crap.
this country, and they're actually getting better benefits than the people that have been here struggling. So I mean, there was a woman I saw today interviewed, and she was pointing out how proudly she went through the whole process to become a legal citizen, and she
Mm-hmm.
held up her certificate of citizenship, and
Mm-hmm.
she talked about how much money it cost for her to get through the system, and how proud she was. And she says, why do these people get to walk across the border and not get any, not have to do any of this? And they
Yep.
immediately get literally money, phones, and a place to stay in a nice 5-star hotel.
It's terrible. It's
Or,
so
or
unfair.
better, they can go to anywhere on this country wherever they want. And one of the police officers in New York City was pointing out today that here we have people coming into our country that are completely undocumented at this point. We don't have photographs, we don't have backgrounds, we don't have
Nothing.
fingerprints, we don't have anything on them. Here they assaulted one of our police officers in New York City, and then they went wandering across the country, and we literally don't have any of the basic
And
information that we
and
need
if I
to
may
find
just
them.
hold that
Sure.
thought. And
Go
do you
ahead.
know that those people, I believe they were arrested after that. And do you know that they're now or they were on their way to California? Do you know who set them up on their way to go to California? A church group.
Sure. Catholic Charities.
They literally took, how many
Catholic
guys was it?
Charities.
They literally took, how many was it? 6 or 7 people that were beaten up on those cops, right? Was it 6 or 7? Do you remember?
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
So
actually, I think
six or seven, whatever
the
it
group
was.
is more in the teens. They're like
uh,
12 or 14 that they're looking for.
Okay, so all right, so whatever the number is, 5, 6, 14, I don't know. But those people who were, you saw the footage, they were trying to kill these people, these cops. They were trying to harm them
When you
badly.
got somebody on the ground and you're kicking
And
them, you
what
don't.
happened was, you now have a church group that is willing to provide sanctuary, if you will, or protection for these people who should be deported
I'm sorry,
from
dude.
this
It's
country.
more than a church group. It's Catholic Charities. These people, Catholic Charities get millions of dollars from the federal government, and they're turning it around and actually just piping it to the illegal immigrants.
What a
So Catholic
Now you want to
Charities
talk about
is,
sin? That's a sin.
you got that right. I mean, here they are literally contributing to the problem. Here they are contributing to how our country is being diluted, and our resources are being diluted, and everyday citizens are getting ignored from their
That's right.
personal struggles, so that the illegals can somehow take
Hmm.
precedence, and then we have illegals beating up our cops and giving us the finger on national
That's right.
television,
You have
literally giving us
students.
the
You have
finger.
students being kicked out of their schools so that they can make. I'm sorry, not kicked out, but they can't go do their physical activities like baseball or football, whatever,
Even if
soccer,
it
because they're
was just
being kicked out of the area so that illegal immigrants can use that area to sleep and stay.
Right. And even though it was for one day during somewhat of an emergency, it's still not right. There's just no reason that
No.
these people should be, displacing citizens from what they are expected to get from being citizens here. You know,
I've said it before. Veterans were being kicked out of hotels so that they could make room for illegal aliens. This is wrong.
more than insulting. Damn, how can you kick out our own veterans? God
Possibly the
bless.
same people who fought for the whole issue with 9/11, who joined the military to fight for I'm not saying that's all of them, but there's a possibility, and they're being kicked out so that we can make room for people that are not even part of this country. I mean, it's
You,
insanity.
It is. You have people who have made the ultimate sacrifice to try and defend freedom. And here they are, trying to enjoy their golden years, as you'd like to explain, describe it as. And that here they are literally getting sent onto the street because, here's this 20, or 30-year-old who comes in from Venezuela and he needs a home instead of you.
It's an insult. And as many people have said, and even you said in the beginning, it's an invasion, and we're allowing let me be specific. The government is allowing it to happen, which is back to my very first point at the beginning of the show. Joe Biden is a treasonous, hypocritical, lying, incompetent POS. And I've had it. I'm This man needs to be removed. The entire family is a corrupt crime family. And they're taking money from other countries that have bribed them, or so he's basically sold out the American country.
To communism, no less. To China, communist China. It's
This is
just
a treasonous matter.
most definitely. And that's where I have adopted the phrase, and you heard it many months ago when I first mentioned it to you. Trader Joe has to go.
That's right.
This is not the type of president. I mean, this presidency has only in common with Benedict Arnold. I
Yep.
mean, that man sold out, West Point. This man has sold out the entire country
Mm-hmm.
to a number of different nations and just to line his own pockets.
That's
And
right.
now he's literally, aiding and abetting in the what was it Bo called it, the fundamental transformation of our country.
Mm.
So here we are in the midst
And
of it.
here's the funny thing is, most Americans, I think about 30 million of them, if not more, we don't want a fundamental change in this country. We don't want things to stay the same. We want them to stay as they were.
We
Good.
like freedom,
Freedom.
and
And
we
we were
we
doing fine up until Obama came into office, and then thank goodness Trump came in, because if we had gotten Hillary, it would have been over.
right. And then this would be the nail in the coffin already, and we would be
Mm-hmm.
already in a seriously horrible situation, no matter who would have followed up Hillary if she got a second one.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that I don't know how to describe this any better than the fact that, if you really care about our country, no matter how you feel about Donald Trump, he is the only one that's going to possibly save the country. And he's
Mm-hmm.
only going to get 4 years to do it. And after that, if somebody else doesn't come up, we are really in horrible situation. I mean, the national debt and the consideration of everything else that's going on, it is a very difficult situation to see how this can be turned around, and
Let me
and the
ask you a
only hope
question.
is Trump.
Let me ask you a question. What would you say to a person who says, I don't vote because I don't believe it has any purpose, because the elites are the ones who put the politicians in power? What would you say to a person who says, I don't vote because I don't believe in it?
That's a really great question, because I honestly haven't necessarily encountered that recently. But if especially if I could answer the person, honestly, if it wasn't a social situation where I was going to brush it off essentially, and if somehow it was somebody that I wanted to have as a friend, I just would be quite honestly like, well, I mean, that's a disappointment from myself. I've always felt the obligation to vote. I felt that if I wasn't going to be in the military, my only obligation as an American was to vote, and that's just kind of somehow how I got raised through the education at that time. But if you don't appreciate what voting means in the grand scheme of things, it's going to be very difficult to try and convince anybody. Every vote does count, and every
Well,
person that doesn't vote, that counts too.
well,
And,
here's my
and
point
there
to
is
that
so
question.
well. Let me just finish this up real quickly. If there are so many people that are so disappointed with the system, and it's again a generational thing. Like we learn these things from generations. You learn hatred, you learn racism, you learn your politics from generations, and so people are just like committed to this idea, like I'm more interested in my own life than I am with whatever's going on with the elections. And that's just such a horrible choice to make, because the Romans actually have already pointed this out. It's only going to lead to a horrible place. You have to care about what your society and what your government is doing, or else
All right, and I
you're going to
get
get
all
what we
that,
have now.
but my point is this. For example, when I was in my 20s, um, I stopped voting for about almost 20 years, until I was about 40 when I voted against President Bush, for a second term. When he was running for second term, I voted against him because I didn't like him. I was still a Democrat at that point, but I knew that going into a war with Iraq was wrong. I knew that, so I voted against him. But up until that point, I hadn't voted for like almost 20 years, or give or take. So I understand when people say to me, "Well, why vote?" Like, how do we know that that vote is counting? For example, when the 2020 election took place and we all thought Trump was going to win that second term, we all went to bed. We wake up in the next morning and we find out that all of a sudden, all these other votes came in. And I'm sorry, but you can't tell me that this man, who is as stupid as a plum, won more votes than Hussein Obama. Because that man got a lot of votes simply because of, well, I'm not going to say it, but he got a lot of votes. But the
Well,
fact that Biden got more votes than him, I don't see that happening. So how do you, like, how do we know for a fact that our votes are really being accounted for?
Well, one of the greatest aspects of manipulation that I'm going to point out from the last election, and I'm going to risk who knows what from pointing this out, but it was the reality that social media being one of the main things that so many people get their news and information from, very much so helped manipulate the public opinion, because that was one of the things that this is what they're seeing on a daily basis. They're not going to any of the news services, they're going to whatever their news feed is on social media.
Right.
And if they're not seeing about things like the Hunter laptop, and the other stories that are most pertinent to the election, then they're not going to be able to make a good judgment. So they're going to go off to the polls, and they're just going to do what they do automatically every time, if they go at all.
Well, that's what I'm saying. What if they say I don't vote because I don't believe it's
Well,
worth it?
then that's my point. Is like that's where you have the low information voters or low information individuals. They're not paying close enough attention to know or care about who's running for what. And that's where they just think
It's
that
just about
complacently,
party.
it's complacency. My life is as it is. It's not going to change. Nothing's going to get worse. Well, the last 3 years, you've seen everything become more expensive.
Yep.
And that's the direct result of the election, of the person that's in charge. Because one of the things that I heard very clearly from an economist, not long ago, and I think it's so apt, is that if you are somebody in charge and you want to make everybody's life better, you want to make energy as cheap as possible.
Mm-hmm.
And therefore, everything will become less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that this guy got into office 3 years ago and everything has gotten more expensive, and
And
he's
but
sat
they're
around
blaming
pointing,
Trump for it. They're
yeah, well,
blaming
that's
Trump,
just it. They're pointing fingers at everybody else, but the
but
fact that we're
themselves.
we're not producing enough oil to actually cover for ourselves like we were before literally, people can see the night and day difference. Before we had cheap gas, now we have expensive gas. Everything is more expensive because gas costs more. If energy costs more, everything is going to cost more, and they directly caused that to happen. I mean, between the invasion and the fact that everything costs more because they have allowed energy to become more expensive, and they've forced the situation, they are traitors. They have caused this
Here,
to
here.
happen to our society for the sake of whatever their ideology is, and it's not in our best interest.
Mm-mm. Well, I've been poised with that situation on numerous events where people say to me, I don't vote because, why bother? And as I say, I
Sure.
was like that years ago throughout my 20s and 30s. And I had actually, there was a point in time when I was about 25 when I actually uh, gave up, if you will, for lack of a better term. I gave up religion, I gave up politics, and I gave up morals. And I kind of went this,
Morals.
yeah, it's a complicated thing. I can't go into it now. It's a lot of detail, but um, I felt that I would be able to do whatever I want. Now, mind you, got to remember, I had just come out of, like, 2 years earlier. I had just been dealing with cancer, 3 years earlier, actually. And I was faced with a life or death circumstance, and my life changed. So I felt like I'm going to go in this route. I'm going to give up politics, religion, and morals, and I'm going to do whatever I want, provided I don't hurt anyone else. That
Right.
was the whole concept. So when I gave up the politics, I stopped voting. I just, because I said, why bother? Because I felt the same way that some of these people do who don't vote because they feel not it's not worth it. Like,
And
why
I can
bother?
see that perspective. I mean, honestly, I mean, it's very disheartening, especially from this perspective in my life after seeing decades of this shit. Honestly, every election cycle and every group of people that come through, and like New Jersey hasn't had a governor that actually has been morally not corrupted,
Mm,
in so long. I mean, I can't even tell you, going back to what was, I mean, there's just been so many.
mm,
I just cannot remember the last governor for the state of New Jersey that did not get, ended in disgrace, or they had to resign, or
right.
something was horrible about them. Chris Christie sitting on the beach was just the last, horror show. In Murph Ball as it exists right now, Mr. Murphy, or however you want to
Murphy.
look at him, apparently by the size of his nose, he spends a decent amount of time imbibing on alcohol. So I don't really know how much he actually cares about anything else. And like, I have no idea. But I mean, for me personally, I really did grow up appreciating the country and our voting rights. And so I've actually, ever since 18, voted in every election,
Mm,
pretty much. I think I
wow.
missed a couple there because of some other issues in my life, but for the most part, I've, for primaries and for presidential elections, I've voted. And like I said, early on, I recognized the fact that we were supposed to register for the draft, and there's the option of us joining the military, but I wasn't there because I was a bleeding heart liberal, and I didn't believe in militarism and being in the military and all that whole thing, because somehow at that point still individualism was okay, but joining the military as a group was not okay. Whatever,
Mm.
as it is. I actually honestly never registered for the draft because I objected to registering for the draft.
Hmm.
But regardless of that, I figured that my duty was to vote. I'm an American citizen, and I have the right to vote for whoever's running for whatever office, and I'm going to give my opinion.
I still don't know what I'll tell somebody next time they tell me that because I guess it's just a matter of them versus me and the knowledge that I have and the knowledge that they have. So it's
We
probably
live in
an
a
open
nation.
question.
Every human being in this world lives inside of a nation, and they have rules and regulations and some sort of constitution or governing documents. and ours entitle us to vote. And I guess from an early age, I recognize, or from statistics, or however it came to me in school, only about 1/3 of the population nowadays actually votes, even in a presidential election.
Mm.
And that's
Well,
just
let's hope all the
appalling.
Democrats don't vote for this upcoming election, because
Well,
this one coming up needs to be a landslide. They
well,
need to
you
they
would hope
need
so.
to they need to completely crush the Democratic Party in this election, because people need to show how they disapprove of what this president and its terrible administration has done to the country and its citizens. They need to have a landslide.
You're not wrong, and that's just it. They need to recognize how horrible all of these decisions have been made. There is not one thing that you can have to say that he's done right. This administration has done right.
How terrible
I
is
mean,
that?
if you can find one thing, it's going to be really pretty minor compared to everything else in the scope of the last 3 years. So,
In addition to how he has hidden from press conferences, he'll only answer questions to the people that are pre-picked on his list. He has to read off a teleprompter, like he's a walking puppet. But
almost definitely, you can't even tell how many hands are up his butt.
yeah,
I mean, making his arms wave and his mouth move. I mean, there are so
mm,
many people that are giving him instructions. I do not believe he is independently
no,
making
he's too
decisions at this
he's too
point.
far gone at this point. And on that note, let's end this subject, end this conversation, and let's move on to our next segment, which is Did You Know? Ladies and gentlemen, if you're interested in any of the merchandise that I sell, you can go to MykeHideous.com. Just like the name of our program here, Finding the Truth with Myke Hideous. If you go to MykeHideous.com, you can get my book, which is called King of an Empire to the Shoes of a Misfit. It is about my years as a performer and a musician, and covers a range from 1988 to 2014. It also talks about my short but very successful point in time when I sang for the famous punk rock band known as the Misfits from Lodi, New Jersey. And you can also get my t-shirts, my horrible artwork, horror design, blankets, t-shirts, throw pillows, girls' dresses, so on and so forth, as well as my music, downloadable CDs. What else? I don't even. Just go to the damn website and check it out. So yeah, that's what I got. You can, and the most recent thing is the book. Hopefully I'm hoping in the next couple of weeks, I'm gonna have a whole bunch of new T-shirts up and ready to go for sale. And that's not just the music stuff from Empire Hideous, the band that I was in, but this whole other section of design of clothing that I have with my artwork designs on them, and I call it horrible artwork. And it's going to be all kinds of stuff like that, old, creepy stuff. In case anybody doesn't know my background, I kind of dabble in the occult, so all creepy, cool stuff like that. So yeah, folks, if you're interested in anything, go to MykeHideous.com. Click on the shop section and go down, and a couple other clicks and you're there. Thanks very much, guys. All right, folks, welcome back. We are about to do a segment I like to call Did You Know? And it's a couple of things like everybody, I catch online and I thought would be interesting to bring up and maybe have a little discussion about. So one of the first things I saw, which kind of really blew me away,
I am intrigued.
was this. And did you know?
Yes.
Good. Then the show's over. Thanks. You have a good night. The James Webb Space Telescope, also known as the JWST, has apparently picked up a signal indicating the possibility of potential life on a planet outside of our solar system, at 120 light years away. Can you imagine that? The James W. telescope saw a planet 120 light years away, and based on the
Mm-hmm.
scientific engineering, is able to figure out what that planet is giving off. So it's
And
120. All right. So it's 120 light years away.
there we go.
It has the ability to. So the James Webb Telescope has the ability to detect certain molecules given off of a planet, or stars, or other various celestial objects, and it has received a potential signal of extraterrestrial life in the atmosphere of this planet that is 120 light years away. The molecule that they are discovering is called I hope I'm saying this right, dimethyl sulfide,
Okay, that's an
which is
actual molecule. Okay, yeah.
only produced by living organisms on planet Earth that we know of, and is that is a the direct signal um, that the James Webb is receiving, that is telling it that there's a very good possibility that there is life on this
And so
planet.
what was it again? Dimethyl.
Dimethyl sulfide, which
I
is
see.
basically when living organisms give off the uh, uh, um, what is it? Not carbon monoxide. Yeah, carbon monoxide, right?
Well, that's a different thing.
I think
But
when you give off whatever oxygen you're breathing,
well, I
or
mean,
decaying,
we
it
breathe
gives off
in
this
oxygen, we give off carbon
dimethyl
dioxide, but
sulfide.
generally out the other end comes the sulfur component. So you're talking about a big interstellar fart.
Yeah,
I
they
mean, is that
think
what we're
that
talking about?
they're thinking that basically there might be life within the water on this planet, and as
And
a
they
result,
farted.
I guess, yeah. Is that what it is? Does it have to do with methane?
Well, methane might be a component of the sulfide. I mean, sulfur is fairly explosive. Um,
Explosive or expulsive?
both, depending on the
What are you
combination.
saying? In what context are you saying it in? What are you saying? I don't understand.
Okay, well, sorry. I am pointing out that yes, just having a sulfur component to whatever is going to maybe make it more explosive. So I am making a joke and I am making
Oh,
light
I
of the
didn't get it.
story.
I'm sorry.
But
Okay,
still, my point is still it's very interesting. Like you pointed out, 140 light years away.
120.
Uh, that's a pinpoint of light. Really, really,
I
really,
know.
really, really small.
Right, but have you seen how big the JW
Oh yes.
ST? It's really, 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 really big.
It
So yeah, and
is,
that's how it's able
but
to see things so much clearer.
I get that. But you're still talking about you know um, swamp gas on another planet.
Right, right. It's amazing. I mean, they did similar um, experiments and studies with the planets in our own solar system, and nothing really came to that. And you got to ask yourself, how do they get this sort of information from a star or a planet that far away? First and foremost,
Well, I can
we didn't even pick up
describe
on
that.
planets until we got the JWST. Okay,
No, that's not actually correct. Because we were able to detect the planets moving in front of their stars in a particular star system.
that's not what I was saying.
Okay.
They didn't have the ability to determine the um, the molecules and the certain things that are given off of a planet until maybe, I don't know, 10-15 years ago. They had certain,
Um,
well, let me finish, hang on.
Go
What
ahead.
I'm saying is they
Finish.
had certain
Yeah.
satellites out there that were able to do it, but they weren't telescopes. Now that they have the telescope up there with certain machinery on it that can be used to detect molecules and the things that are being given off in that solar system, or galaxy, however far away it is. Now they're being able to really pinpoint it with the James Webb. I'm
The
tongue
Webb
tied.
telescope.
The James Webb Telescope.
Yes.
So, but they
So,
did have satellites that were able to do it more locally, not as far
well,
as a James Webb.
I'm sure there is a discussion of sensitivity, but just to point out from a chemistry standpoint, when particular elements burn, they have particular colors. So that's one of the ways that they're able to detect
Right.
from this
That's right.
great a distance, what chemicals possibly are involved with their atmosphere or whatever other conditions, because of the colors that are especially being picked up by the Webb telescope.
Mm-hmm.
So that is a big indicator. Of what elements that they're dealing with, and potentially what molecules they're dealing with, because of course a molecule is a combination of elements into a new material. So
Right. So I
um,
just find it quite amazing that they have actually gotten to a point where they think they may have been able to discover the possibility of there being life on another planet, and blows me away that it's 120 light years away. It's just astonishing.
mhm. I agree, there's a number of, I mean, the catalog now of extra what's the term? I don't want to say it incorrectly, but the number of planets they've discovered around stars now is
It's
somewhere in the
increasing.
thousands, if not tens of thousands,
Yep.
and it's just there's a huge variety of planets that they've discovered. But this sort of branches into our conversation from our last cast, in the fact that um, you know these places are so far away, and if there is life that has evolved that becomes intelligent, getting to the point of where you either send yourself or just a probe out into space is such a huge undertaking.
Of course.
So
It's
it
amazing.
is something to take into consideration as they continue to explore with the James Webb. I think that that is the most magnificent piece of technology that
Oh,
we've sent up there.
it's amazing. I'm so
Between
happy
that
we got
and the
it out there.
Hubble Space Telescope, that's still taking great pictures. We have two great eyes in the sky that
Yep.
are at least giving us more information about our universe and our solar system.
That's right. So I have another one for you. Did you know? Actually, I'm going to start it off with a question. What do you think the largest wingspan on a bird is? What if you had to pick a bird? What would you say the largest bird is?
Well, I'm pretty sure the California condor was way up there.
It's a good guess, but it's not
Um,
the biggest bird.
I mean, maybe if you want to go for an ostrich, which may have a larger because it's just huger, huge,
Actually, they're
shorter.
that's in girth and height. I'm talking about the wingspan of a bird.
Right, I get it. Yeah. So
Okay, so
I mean, condor. California condor is the last I heard that was the largest.
they're pretty big, but they're not the biggest. The biggest, or I should say, the largest wingspan of any bird that can fly, of course, is the albatross. Did you know that an albatross, its wingspan is about 11 feet? The albatross can fly for years without ever touching the ground. As a matter of fact, according to scientific research, the first 6 years of an albatross's life is spent flying over the ocean without ever touching the ground.
That sounds remarkable, because how would you not eat? I mean, you can't
Well,
spend 6 years in the air
when I say
not
not
eating.
touching the ground, I mean they land on water, they'll dive into water, but primarily they spend their life on the wing. They even can sleep in intervals
Oh, good. Well,
while they're
now I
on
feel
the
a
wing.
lot better about it, because I was very concerned how you could spend that many years in the sky not
Right, and
eating
not eat. Right.
anything,
Oh, of
since
course.
there's not
Well, I was going to
flying
specify
fish
that.
don't get that high. I mean, generally.
I was going to specify that, but yeah. So they will. When I said they don't touch the ground, I meant they don't land on ground. They'll land in the water to catch their food, but they very quickly get back up into the sky. Now, if you've ever seen an albatross at all, you'll notice that their wingspan is not exactly that of a regular bird. In fact, their wingspan is almost like a person's arm joint. So you get the shoulder, the elbow, the wrist, and then the fingertips. That's how their wing contracts. If you ever look at how an albatross spreads its wings, you'll be amazed. It's got more bones in it than you would expect, and the wings are very thin, which almost like a seagull or a tern, that enables them to get the flight that they do, as opposed to like a predator bird on land, like an eagle or a hawk or a condor.
Interesting. Wow,
Yeah,
that's amazing. So
yeah.
where do you find those necessarily? Where are
Albatross.
they? Indigenous to?
That's a very good question. If I remember correctly, I want to say it's in like Pacific areas, northern Pacific areas. Um, they tend to go on these islands. I see them a lot on the islands. And the funny thing is, I don't have a solid answer for you on that. But
You
I think
don't? Oh my
I
God!
think they are more northern birds than anything, either northern or far south, Antarctic or North Pole. But they don't live in those areas. They live closer to them.
Okay. So do we need to do a quick search here
Now
on?
let's move on.
Okay, fine.
I'll tell you another one. And do you know that dinosaurs, or I should say birds, are a descendant of dinosaurs? Did you know that?
Yes, I did, and in fact, I think that might be old news to most of our audience since
Yes.
Jurassic Park.
At that, well, you know why? You know why I bring that up? Because for years they didn't know for sure if the dinosaurs were associated with birds, but they have since determined, based on the fossils that they're finding of prehistoric dinosaurs, uh, particularly their feet, as well as some of them with their heads. Um, they have, instead of having more lizard like qualities, they have more bird like qualities. And to further that notion, as time went on, they began to find more fossils that had feathers on them. So, what happened is these dinosaurs began to develop feathers not only for warmth, but eventually they started using them where they could glide by spreading their arms with the wings, and they didn't actually fly, they would glide using the feathers. They'd climb a tree, and this happens today with lizards, squirrels. They grow, in the case of the squirrels, they have a membrane between their legs. In the case of lizards, same situation. In fact, there's even a fucking snake that can fly, that flattens out its body, and as it's going through the air does like a serpentine thing and goes from one fucking tree to the next. It's mind-blowing. But my point is, they have since discovered that these dinosaurs, discovered having been discovered with feathers on them, they're now putting the links together that prove birds are a descendant of dinosaurs.
Very fascinating.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got one more for you.
Okay.
Actually, I got two more. This one's quick. You know anything about spices?
Well, other
Aside from
than
that, they're good.
yeah, using them in cooking. I mean, yeah.
Right. I use
I
spices all the
know
time
that.
when I cook.
What is it? Oh crap! I shouldn't have started down this road. What is? Oh, saffron. Saffron is
I
one of
was
the
about to
most.
tell you that one.
Okay, saffron is one of the rarest, most expensive spices in the world, and I actually watched the video.
It's 9 o'clock.
Excuse me. I actually watched the video where they talked about, basically described where they get it from and how
That's
rare
right.
it is and how difficult it is to produce essentially.
Saffron is the most expensive spice in the world, and it goes for $5,000 a pound. 75,000 flowers need to be picked by hand in order to make 1 pound of saffron.
Really impressive. And if you ever watch, if you look up a video of them doing it, it's so these flowers are tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And they have to literally hand scrape off the little pollen, and like you said, 75,000
Thousand
for
picked
one
by hand.
pound. So I mean, you have all sorts of. I mean, this stuff is produced in India and Pakistan. So I mean, you got all these guys that are just sitting there going through piles and piles of little flowers, just coming up with this
In addition,
minute amount of material.
in addition to having to evade king cobras that roam all over India.
Not to
Yeah,
mention Bengal tigers.
that too. Yeah. Okay, so I got one more for you. All right.
Okay.
So I got a very interesting thing. This really kind of grabbed my attention. The fastest fish. So
It's not the piranha, is it?
well, I'm getting there.
Fine.
So the fastest fish, I'm going to do it from slowest to fastest. All right, so the slowest. Starting out, we have the great white and the orca, which have been clocked at about 35 miles an hour, give or take. Next, we have the barracuda. The barracuda has been clocked at 36 miles per hour. Next on the list, we have what is called a bonefish, also a very good restaurant, I might add.
Yes, I've been there. It's very tasty.
Great food. I love bonefish. Let's get them as a sponsor. No, I'm kidding. I want to get free meal tickets. They've been clocked at 39.8 miles per hour. Next up is the bluefin tuna. Have you ever see those fish? They're fucking.
Oh yeah.
Oh my god, they're built like
I wish
a
I
rock.
could hook one. It'd be worth $250,000.
Yeah, it's like they're like $20,000, $25,000 if you catch a one that's the size of a Volkswagen.
That's $25,000 a pound.
Is it a pound? No.
Yes, they go for like depending on how big they are, they go literally for $500,000.
The fish does, not per pound.
The whole fish, yes.
I challenge you on that. Anyway, let me finish my list here. Bluefish tuna, 43.5 miles per hour. That's pretty fast, okay? But the one that beats that is the albacore and the wahoo. We used to know a guy in Patterson that we used to call wahoo. That
bet he was really cool.
He was kind of touched in the head. He used to sing when he walked down the street. Wahoo. In fact, he was on the Uncle Floyd show. Anyhow, the albacore and the wahoo have been clocked at 50 miles per hour. Now we're getting up there. Wait till you hear the next three. After that, the swordfish, 62.1 miles per hour. That's fast. The sailfish.
Oh yeah, like the last one was really slow. I mean,
the sailfish. Now you know what a sailfish is, right? It's got that big.
Yeah, it's got the big fin
on the back, right? Okay. And I believe they have a point on their nose too. Not as big as the swordfish, but big enough. 68.3 miles per hour. Now,
damn.
Wait till you hear this. The fastest fish recorded is the black marlin. You ready? 82 miles per hour. Could you imagine that thing coming at you? 82 miles per hour. And
it'd be like a missile. If it's coming at you, you'd just be, you'd be run through before you knew it.
The way most fish are constructed, they are aerodynamic, if that's the word for underwater. Would it be aerodynamic? Hydrodynamic. There you go.
Not dynamic.
And they're made they're made for speed, like tuna and all these other fish. But I didn't know that the black marlin, the swordfish, or the sailfish could even travel over 50 miles an hour, let alone 62, 68, and 82. Blows me away. I'm blown away by fish. And that's that.
I hear that, and definitely very impressive. I mean, the marine species out down there, there's just far too many animals that are just far too impressive, and it's amazing to see just all of them. Honestly, I mean, there's so many videos nowadays on YouTube
Yeah,
which will let you get to go in a deep sea submersible
yeah.
where they're exploring, just looking for different species,
I
and
love
they
that
see
stuff.
some things that are just like stunning down there, and
Yeah,
it's truly it goes back to honestly a line in Jurassic Park where uh, I don't remember the character's name, but the actor pointed out, like, life finds a way.
that's right.
So even in the depths of the ocean, you can have such amazing expressions of life,
Mm.
and there they are in the middle of darkness, literally thousands, if not miles down in the ocean.
I think it's astonishing that there are species in the oceans, and even in some of the rainforests, deep in the forests, that we have never discovered before. Um, as
Sure.
you mentioned too, there are species that evolve into a whole new species. Like they just discovered, I don't remember exactly the amount, but they were down in the rainforests of the Amazon, and they found like, oh, I don't know, maybe 50 new or 20 new species of frogs, like all that evolved out of a different freaking frog.
Yeah.
I mean, nature is just absolutely amazing. And when the day comes when humanity wipes itself out, nature
You
will
say with such
definitely.
confidence.
Oh, I have no doubt in my mind.
I do.
When that point comes, there's no doubt in my mind that animals and and the animal kingdom, including insects, especially insects, will dominate the world. Because eventually we're going to be gone, just like the dinosaurs. We're going to be gone.
Well, I mean, I have no doubts of the evolution of species and the fact that there are extinctions of species. I am very doubtful of whether or not the human species will actually annihilate itself. Um, you
And
know,
maybe it won't. Maybe a comet or a meteorite the size of Texas will hit us, and then that will be our demise. Because it's
it
happened
could be.
numerous times
No, no,
before.
yeah, yeah, yeah. You're not wrong. And in fact, we just had a flyby by about, I think, 4 different asteroids this last weekend
Oh, great.
that came within 2 million miles. And so sure, I mean, now we're actually aware of these things, whereas 100, 200 years ago, these things were flying by our planet. We had no idea. So honestly,
Did you and I?
I tend
Did
to
you?
lean on the side of hope just a bit more than maybe many optimists,
You keep
or
doing that.
pessimistic people. But I tend to hope that the human species at the very least will persevere beyond its own ignorance. I'll put it that way, at the very least.
Have you and I discussed Apophis
Apophis.
in
You are
2000
speaking of.
in 2036? A meteor.
Yes.
In fact, on April 13th, 2036,
Is it a Friday?
it is Apophis meteor, asteroid, whatever you want to call it, uh, will be passing by the Earth, and the chances of it hitting us are very great. And here's the important part. So there is this there's what they call a keyhole. So in the next, let's see, 20 6 7 8, I think, oh, I can't remember what year. I think they said in 2027 or 28, Apophis is going to fly back past the Earth. It's going to be so close between us and the moon, and like you're going to be able to see it with a naked eye. And if it goes through what they call the keyhole, which is a position that goes around the Earth, and if it goes through that keyhole and it gets catapulted back into outer space and then comes around again in 2036, the potential of it hitting Earth and causing a catastrophic destruction of all, who knows, it's going to um, it's going to do that. So
Yeah,
they have,
world-ending event.
yeah. So let's see, the Earth's gravity.
Well,
It will pull it closer. So if it goes through the keyhole, the Earth's gravity will pull it closer to the Earth. so
Sure.
that by the time 2036 comes around, it will hit the Earth. And I'm not the one that's saying
Or
this. Neil Tyson deGrasse is saying this.
oh well, then it's got to be true.
It
No,
is.
I mean the reality is that it'll obviously come close. Whether it's drawn in by the Earth's gravitation is another thing. Whether or not Earth's technology and governments and everything else is, in a position to do anything about it, just like alluded to in Armageddon and Deep Impact, they may be able to send something out there. We did actually prove recently, I can't remember the exact asteroid, but we were able to change the trajectory of an asteroid from sending a probe to it.
Yeah, I forget
So
what that one was
there
called.
there is probability that at this point, depending on our socio-economic and political systems at the time, we could possibly do something to change the trajectory of a potential
Well, I got
asteroid.
news for you. They
Sure.
say, they say if it does hit, it'll hit 500 kilometers west of Santa Monica, plunging 3 miles deep and exploding and move the ocean waters by 3 miles.
Well, yeah, I mean, what you've just described is most definitely an event that's going to be heard around the planet and felt around the planet. But still, the reality is you're talking about trying to predict. It's like trying to predict where a gunshot's going to wind up when you're shooting at a target that's a mile away. It's very difficult at this point to be sure exactly what that's going to be. So
Hey
that's
man,
where I
if it hits the
definitely
earth one way or another, we're going to be in serious trouble.
I agree. And, my only thought when, because, with any luck, I'm going to, you and I will still be alive. I really hope to have a really great view sitting on the side of a mountainside with a nice fire going and enjoying some tasty food, burgers or steaks or whatever. And we're going to watch the world, kill itself or
Mm.
destroy it. But, regardless, it's just, what can we do?
Well, it
It's
would
like
be
worrying
the
about
meteorite
driving.
that would be killing us.
It's like worrying about driving out on the highway. I'm sorry.
I know the theory.
It's
Yes,
the
I get
same
it.
sort of scenario. Every day I go out
I
there
know.
on the highway and
Well,
I'm looking for
my
the other guy that's going to take
I
me
know.
out.
All I'm saying is that the possibility of a meteor strike eventually taking out humanity is probably far greater than world peace.
Or humanity taking out itself.
Possibly.
So, it's certainly, one
Then
of the
again,
things.
then there's also the possibility of Yosemite exploding as
Sure, but
a
that's only
super volcano.
one of the super volcanoes
I
on the
know,
planet.
but I say that specifically because we live here. Now they've been monitoring the park, and they're noticing that it's bulging.
Yep, it's rising, but it's
It's
only by
bulging up.
like centimeters or so.
Right, but every year it gets a little bit more. So what's happening is magma is building up underneath that park, heating up
Definitely.
the water, which is why you get all those uh, what do you call them? Fountains, glaciers. No,
Pfizer's,
geysers, glaciers.
geysers, Pfizer's. Pfizer is a different company.
So
Geysers.
yeah, so you got, for those of you who don't know, the magma, the lava, is basically building up underneath a underground
Caldera.
lake, and the lake gets heated up and it creates all these geysers. But what's
Right.
happening now is, and if you don't know your science, millions of years ago, probably far before the dinosaurs, the Yosemite was a super volcano, which means it was just freaking gigantic, a giant hole in the ground with lava spouting out, killing everything, and well, nothing was alive. I think when it started. So there's several of them on the planet, but this one's right in our own backyard, and what's happening is it's beginning to show signs of stress. Now, how long can something like that go on until it actually collapses and explodes? We may never know. And I tell you the truth, I hope I'm not around when that time comes.
And I tend to think that's going to be the scenario, honestly, because this is still, geological time is a far larger scale than our lifetimes.
Right.
So, the most likely you and our listeners and everybody that we, our children and our children's children will not know that scenario. But, who knows? And
I
on
would
that
like
note,
to conclude my Did You Know session. I thought that was
there
pretty
you go.
interesting. Hope you liked
Yeah,
it.
definitely. We had some
Okay.
definitely some interesting points.
Warning, if you are easily offended, we urge you not to listen to this broadcast. You'll only hurt yourself and cry. Okay, folks, thank you for listening to the show tonight, Finding the Truth with Myke Hideous. Me, Myke Hideous. And I really wanted to say to everybody, if you can help us out by subscribing, liking, subscribing, and sharing this show, if you liked it and you think others might like it, please do so, because it'll only help us. We're trying to make this show entertaining so that you like it as well as us. Uh, And yeah, so you can find us on, you can either go to MykeHideous.com, which is Myke, M-Y-K-E, hideous.com, and you can go right on the front page and it'll give you the options on where you can choose to hear this or see this show. Or you can go to Amazon, Spotify, YouTube, or any Apple podcasts and look for Finding the Truth with Myke Hideous. And then, of course, there is my website, MykeHideous.com, with the merchandise that I sell. So check us out on the website, as well as liking us, subscribing, and sharing. And on that note, I want to say thank you to everybody. And I'd like to let my co-host and producer, Professor Z, say goodnight, Z.
Good night, everyone. It's been a pleasure debating the reality of what's going on in this world and finding the truth with Myke Hideous.
Thank you, Professor Z. All right, folks. Had a good night, and I hope to have you tune in next time for our 7th show. Have a good night. Good night.
I'm hitting the stop button right now.